Hello and welcome to the Pickwatch Podcast. I am KC Joyner, also known as the Football Scientist. You may remember me from my ESPN career where I covered the NFL, fantasy football, college football, and the NFL draft for 14 years. I'm now on the independent path via my website, kcjoyner.com. I've also partnered up with the Pickwatch team as their newest NFL expert. I'll be writing a weekly Pick'em article every Thursday that will be available for free. I will also be doing weekly video posts to review what my picks were that week and give some insight as to why I made them, with the goal of helping Pickwatch readers and viewers with their weekly selections at Pickwatch.com. We'll get into this week's picks shortly, but before we do, I want to take a moment to let you know about a couple of other posts I wrote. This first post covers my 3 main rules when it comes to picking games every week. They include things like always select the better team, find the best tiebreaker to fit the situation at hand, and trust the process and don't chase games. That article gives you an idea of what it is that I cover every week when I'm looking at games, and these are the rules that I generally go by, and I'm going to pick winners and losers in any given week. The second article covers the 3 powerful early season tiebreaking factors to use in Pick'em contest. Those 3 main rules work very well over the course of a full season, but during the first quarter of a season, there are 3 other factors that can come in very strongly as tiebreaking factors and actually can overrule the first 3 rules if they're strong enough. They are personnel continuity. You want players with a lot of returning starters. Usually you hear about that in college, but it's going to matter in the pros. In general, it matters. And this year, when we've had almost no offseason to speak of, no preseason games and a truncated training camp, it's going to be an even bigger factor this year. You're also going to want experience over youth. You want teams that could start the season in a hurry. I talk about in the article about George Allen, a famous Hall of Fame pro coach, who had a fantastic early season record. George believed very strongly in experience over youth. He had veteran teams, and he didn't believe in having any young players on his team if he could avoid it. In fact, on his 72 championship team, as I talk about in the article, he had 14 of his 22 starters were 29 years or older, a number that would be even higher if his 29-year-old kicker and 30-year-old punt and kick returner were included in the starters roster. He didn't want anybody who didn't know what they were already doing. And it worked like a champ because in the early season of his career, the first 4 weeks of the season for all of his teams over the course of his NFL coaching career, they had a 38-10 record, a 79.2% win rate. That's not going to be what you're going to see if you pick veteran teams over young teams, but you do want to take experience over youth most of the time if it's a good as a good tiebreaker during the early portion of a season, and especially this year we've got such a truncated offseason. You also want to take home field into account. That's always a good tiebreaker, but it's especially good this year when you've got teams taking really long road trips, because those road trips sometimes are going to be the first time they've been on the road because we've had no preseason games. So you want to take home field into account, especially if you've got teams that are facing long road trips. Let's start with the kickoff contest of Houston at Kansas City. Before we get into the specifics of that game, though, I want to take a look at how I'm going to go over these picks. Each game is going to be listed on the screen here, and it's going to tell you not only who I think is going to win the game, there's also a quick summary in these articles of why it is that I think that team's going to win the game. I'm also putting a confidence level score on each contest with just 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the most confident and 1 being the least confident. That's to help people who might be in confidence leagues to say, hey, should you pick this team, should you not pick that team, where should you put that total? This confidence level will help there. So now that we got that out of the way, we'll take a look at why I've got Kansas City to pick in this contest. Kansas City returns 20 out of 22 starters, and they actually have even more talent returning at running back than people think. They're going to get Clyde Edwards-Helaire into this game. They're going to make him a centerpiece of their rushing attack eventually, but in week 1, they may actually rotate him with Darrell Williams. The thing is, Andy Reid last year showed that he's willing to lean on the running game and the defense when he has to or when the situation calls for it. Because in the last 9 games of the year, Kansas City last year threw for 300 or more net passing yards only 2 times. They had fewer than 200 passing yards 3 times in that stretch. I don't think they'll be quite to that extent of rushing the ball this year, but they're going to run the ball more frequently. That's why they brought Edwards-Helaire in. They can win contests either if they want to ground and pound to play defense or if they go through the air. Houston's got a much more limited approach, and Houston, they allowed 51 points to the Chiefs last season in the divisional playoff, and they haven't gotten that much better. So I'm picking Kansas City in this contest with a confidence level of 7. I picked Kansas City to win that contest, but regardless of if Kansas City wins that game straight up, there is a way to land a nearly 100% chance of victory in that matchup by taking advantage of the DraftKings introductory deal that gives you Kansas City plus 101 points. It's not an error, it's not a typo, it's not a mistake. It is truly the Chiefs plus 101 points in this matchup. All you have to do to get in on this introductory deal is to click on the link in the description and go to the DraftKings promotions page, sign up, and deposit $5. It's a no-brainer deal that would be beyond foolish to pass up. Now let's take a look at Seattle at Atlanta. Seattle has the longest road trip in week 1 as they are the only team that has to travel more than 2,000 air miles in this week. They got to go 2,182 miles to be exact. Since these teams are fairly close talent-wise, I might normally lean towards picking the Falcons, but per my matchup rankings, Atlanta's secondary gives Seattle the most favorable pass defense matchup in week 1. Seattle was also 6-0 last year in games where they had to travel to the Eastern time zone, where they had to go all the way to the Eastern time zone and play a contest. They were undefeated. You wouldn't think a West Coast team could do that, but Seattle has the type of team that travels well. So I think the long flight and related issues that go with that likely won't rattle Seattle, so I've got them winning this contest. Confidence level only 5 on this one, though. Now let's take a look at Cleveland at Baltimore. One of my primary rules in picking games, you should always select the team that has the most talent, especially if there's a big talent differential, unless there's factors like injuries or something else to close the gap. Baltimore in this contest, they have better run blocking, a huge edge at quarterback, they have a much stronger secondary, arguably the best kicker in the league, and they're playing at home against a Cleveland squad that has a new coaching staff is making its first road trip of the season. This pick is tied for the most confident pick of the week and would rate a 10 confidence level if it wasn't the opening week of the season. Now let's take a look at the New York Jets of Buffalo. A lot of people sell Adam Gase short because of his penchant for irking his players and because of his press conference antics, but don't forget that Gase turned a 4-win caliber roster in Miami into a solid club. Gang Green also finished the season last year very strong with 6 wins in its last 8 contests. They would have been a playoff contender probably last year had not Sam Darnold missed the first 3 games of the year. Having said all this, Buffalo claims a significant talent edge in most areas. Add that to this being a road contest for the Jets, and it's just enough for Buffalo to rate the pick, but this is truly a toss-up matchup, so I'll only give it a confidence level of 2. Now let's take a look at Las Vegas at Carolina, and it still seems strange to say the Las Vegas Raiders. I keep wanting to say Oakland. This is another toss-up matchup, as there are reasons to favor both teams. Teddy Bridgewater passed all 7 Parcells rules as a collegian, and he played quite well filling in last year for Drew Brees. Carolina is going to feature Bridgewater's passing, as they kept 6 wide receivers on their active roster, and they've got the kind of offensive system that could lead to him throwing the ball 600-plus times this year. The Raiders' pass defense gives the Panthers 73 matchup points on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being the best, so there is a significant personnel edge here. Throw in the fact that the Silver and Black were 2-6 on the road last year and 1-5 in games where they had to travel to the Central or Eastern time zone, and it leads to Carolina being the selection with a confidence level of 4. Next up, let's take a look at Chicago at Detroit. Matthew Stafford played in only 8 games last year before he was sidelined with a back injury. During that span, though, he was on pace to post more than 5,000 passing yards, 38 passing touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. He's a great fit for the Darrell Bevell offense. The Lions added offensive line and running back talent to their already stocked offense this offseason, so Stafford could repeat last year's figures. Chicago used to be a really great defense before Vic Fangio went to Denver, but the secondary took a big step backward last year, so this matchup isn't as daunting as it would have been just 2 years ago. These factors all lean towards Detroit having a solid edge in this matchup, and I give them a confidence level of 6. Now let's take a look at Indianapolis at Jacksonville. There are times when it pays to not overthink these things. Jacksonville has jettisoned a ton of talent this offseason, and it's leading to legitimate discussions as to whether or not they're tanking the season to try to get Trevor Lawrence with the first pick in the 2021 draft. The Colts have a dominant offensive line, the makings of a great Thunder and Lightning backfield. They've got a veteran quarterback still capable of hitting the long pass. They've got one of the best linebacking cores in the league, and they actually have more strengths beyond this. This is one of the strongest picks of the week, as the Colts earn a 9 confidence level, and it could be a 10. Again, if this wasn't a week 1 matchup, I'd probably be saying this was a 10 confidence level. This should be a fun one. Green Bay at Minnesota in a week 1 NFC North powerhouse matchup. Green Bay's only won 1 of the last 4 road contests against Minnesota, that being last year's Week 16 matchup. The Vikings didn't have Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison, and they had to go up Mike Boone, and it just wasn't good enough. Well, Minnesota's got Cook and Madison for this contest. They also added a potential impact defensive end in Yannick Ngakoue in a recent trade of the Jaguars. It's always a difficult task to pick a winner between divisional foes in an opening week matchup where the teams have roughly equal talent. But in this case, most of them, if not all the tiebreakers, point towards the Vikings, so I'll go with Minnesota in this matchup, but only with a confidence level of 3. Don't forget that tiebreakers won't be necessary for those who take advantage of the DraftKings introductory offer of the Kansas City Chiefs plus 101 points against Houston in their Week 1 matchup. You heard that right. It's the Chiefs plus 101 points. Getting a triple-digit point total assures a winning wager. So go to the link in the description below to go to the DraftKings promotion page, sign up, and make a $5 deposit to get Kansas City plus 101 points today. It will be the best opening week move you make. Now let's move on to Miami at New England. Last year at this time, Miami was the worst team in the league, and they had a 59-0 home loss to Baltimore in Week 1. When that happened, there was talk that this could be one of the worst teams in NFL history. Well, Miami head coach Brian Flores didn't buy into that assessment as he pushed and cajoled the Dolphins to 5 wins in the last 9 games last year. New England said goodbye to Tom Brady. They lost a ton of defensive talent for a variety of reasons, and they have a huge question mark at kicker. But they also have Cam Newton, who is fired up to prove that the end of his Carolina tenure wasn't the end of his career. Flores is going to find a way to keep this game close, but the combination of it being a road contest and Newton's big playability, which Miami's offense simply doesn't have, moves the pick in the Patriots column with a confidence level of 6. Next up is Philadelphia at Washington. In one of those articles I wrote for Pickwatch that I talked about earlier, I talked about the Eagles having huge personnel adjustments to make on their offensive line and at wide receiver. They're turning over all kinds of people there, and they've got really no personnel continuity. They also changed 6 starters on defense. That type of turnover can usually end up as a strong tiebreaker when the talent levels are even, but Washington is one of the least talented teams in the league, especially on defense. That gives Philadelphia some of the best matchup rankings in Week 1 and makes them a more than solid pick'em selection with a confidence level of 7. Now let's take a look at what should be an interesting matchup, the LA Chargers at Cincinnati. I've been pitching Tyrod Taylor as a sleeper candidate in fantasy football early and often this year. His actual game impact could be just as strong, as the Bills went 22-20 in his 3 years as a starter in Buffalo. Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn coached Taylor in 2 of those 3 seasons, and he knows how efficient Taylor can be at quarterback. The Bengals added plenty of talent this offseason. The Chargers do have one of the longest road trips in Week 1 in this contest, but Cincinnati hasn't done anywhere near enough to vault upwards from its worst in the league status last season. Suggesting to go chalk on this one and pick the Chargers, only picking it at a confidence level of 6 though. Next up is what could be the highest scoring game of the week, Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Tampa Bay has lost 3 straight and 5 of the last 7 matchups against New Orleans, but that was before Tom Brady arrived. Brady posted middle-of-the-pack vertical numbers last year with an abysmal Patriots receiving core, but now he has the elite vertical targets that Tampa Bay has, and he's in a very aggressive Bruce Arians offense, so he could post some of the best numbers of his career. The problem for Tampa is the Saints' offense is every bit as powerful, and New Orleans has an appreciably stronger defense than the Bucs. This is one of the toughest picks of the week, but you combine those factors with this being a home game for the Saints, and New Orleans gets a slight edge on this pick with a confidence level of 2. Here's what should be a fun divisional matchup, Arizona at San Francisco. There are many reasons to want to pick Arizona in this one. Kyler Murray is a sleeper MVP candidate. Kenyon Drake posted near elite breakaway numbers in Arizona last year, and a metric I have called good blocking yards per attempt that measures how productive backs are when given quality run blocking. The addition of DeAndre Hopkins provides the Cardinals with an elite workhorse threat that they didn't have last year. But even with all that, the 49ers get the edge here because Arizona just hasn't proven yet that they can go toe-to-toe in the type of power football contest that San Francisco excels at playing. So I'm going to go the 49ers in this one, only with a confidence level of 5 though. Next up is what might be the most intriguing matchup of the week, Dallas at the LA Rams. It's another very difficult selection, as the addition of CeeDee Lamb and the development of Michael Gallup gives the Cowboys an impact trio of wideouts that brings to mind recent Rams squads. LA could be back at that level of passing production, though, as rookie wide receiver Van Jefferson has performed so strongly in camp that he may have landed a role as a starter when the Rams go to 3 wideout sets. Dallas has an edge at quarterback and running back, but they cede some of that advantage back in other personnel areas. Since this results in all the matchup rankings of these teams being roughly equal, the percentage move is to go with the home team, so I'm picking LA here, but only with a confidence level of 2. The first of 2 Monday night games is Pittsburgh at the New York Giants. Pittsburgh will be celebrating the return of Ben Roethlisberger, who says his elbow is pain-free for the first time in many years. The Steelers also added a potential red zone impact target in Eric Ebron, And James Conner is going to be a bell cow back at a contract year and could be very motivated to have a great season. The Giants' secondary is in such terrible shape that in the past week and change they signed Logan Ryan and traded for a backup cornerback from Denver in an effort to shore up that position. If all this wasn't enough, Pittsburgh has the most talented defense in the league and is facing a mistake-prone quarterback. It adds up to this being one of the most confident picks of the week, with Pittsburgh rating an 8 confidence level. The second Monday Night Football game and last game of Week 1 is Tennessee at Denver. There are many reasons to be tempted to pick the Broncos in this one. Denver closed out last year with 4 wins in the last 5 weeks. They vastly upgraded their skill position talent level by adding Melvin Gordon and Jerry Jeudy. Playing in the high altitude of Denver will keep much of the typical home field advantage in place, even though there won't be fans in the stands. Tennessee insists last year was not a one-year wonder, but so much of it looks like a proverbial lightning in a bottle that it looks like last year's going to be hard to replicate. If this game happened in another week or two and it was clear Denver's taking the step forward that it looks like they're able to take, this pick could go in their direction, but Tennessee's talent advantage keeps the projected win in the Titans column, although it only has a confidence level of 2. The largest win margin in NFL history was when Chicago beat Washington 73-0 in the 1940 title game. Keep that in mind when taking a look at this insane offer that DraftKings Sportsbook has of plus 101 points for the Chiefs. That's not a typo or mistake. It is truly Kansas City plus 101 points in their Week 1 matchup against Houston. Nothing in life is guaranteed, but this is about as close as one can get to a guarantee. Click the link in the description below to take advantage of this introductory offer. Just click the link, go to DraftKings.com promotion page, sign up, and put down a deposit of $5 and you get the Chiefs plus 101 points.